Audrey Danner, and I have no champagne, no swords, so we'll keep this brief. Good morning. Welcome to Mountain Connect in beautiful Vail. We're very pleased to be here, but most of all, I am pleased to see all of you here because Jeff and I have been doing Mountain Connect and various iterations of telecommunications and now broadband conferences for 8 years. We know it takes interested citizens, local officials, higher up elected officials, it takes industry, it takes all of us working to resolve our local community infrastructure and capacity issues. So thank you all, because it takes all of us. And remember that when people are saying, now what are you doing in my case, Craig, or the Denver area, or Ohio, or Minnesota, or Oregon, as we'll hear tomorrow. That's how we learn, is sharing our stories, our successes, and those pieces that maybe didn't go as well as we had hoped. But that's a learning piece. So thank you all. It is my pleasure to welcome our next speaker. And our Lieutenant Governor, Donna Lynne, has agreed to welcome all of you. Donna has been a telecommunications fan, along with her industry work in healthcare and other successful businesses that she's managed. We welcome Donna Lynne, our Lieutenant Governor of Colorado.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. And Audrey, thank you. And Jeff, I don't think I could do that. I'm sorry. I'd be worried about the glass that you get in the bottle. It's great to be here for a couple reasons. Actually, Audrey has a lot to do with not only why I'm here, but why I'm here and probably tired. I won't get political, but I am running for a very small promotion this year. And a lot of it had to do, honestly, with an interaction I had not only with Audrey, but a lot of other rural communities a couple years ago, but also over the course of my time as the Lieutenant Governor and Chief Operating Officer. So I got to visit all 64 counties as part of that, and just began to realize, and I'm sorry, when you're Front Range centric, just like you're California centric or Colorado centric. And I was pretty shocked at the differences in the economic recovery and the resources that we have in our rural communities, and began to be a little bit of a crusader. And the governor, for the last 2 years, when he delivers his State of the State address, actually the most commonly used word, if you do those Wordle things where you count the number of words, is rural. So it has been a particular passion of mine, and I really am happy to be here and to kick you off and to talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing in broadband. I want to recognize Anthony Neal Graves, who's here at our front table, who, as you know, we call him our broadband czar, even though czars are somewhat out of fashion these days. And I know Brian Shepard is also here, and I just want to acknowledge all the great state folks who work in this area, in the Department of Local Affairs, in the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and in the Office of Information Technology. And I'm looking right at one of our state senators, too, Angela Williams. And so, as Audrey said, it really does take a lot of us. It takes our legislators who have the courage to enact legislation to support this work. It takes local communities, it takes businesses, and so we are, to use an overused phrase, a village. I'd love to stay with you today, but I am getting on a plane in Eagle to go to Durango. Those of you from Durango and down in that area know we have some serious fires, and I am leading a team that's going to go down and talk to some of the local officials about economic development and how that fire and many of the fires that we're going to have this season really aren't just about putting out the fire, they're about supporting our communities. So let me talk a little bit about broadband. And as you know, access to high-speed broadband is this century's equivalent of access to electricity or telephone service in the 20th century. High-speed broadband is required for economic development, for education, for public safety, and for healthcare. And my background, a lot of it is healthcare, and I've seen the power of telemedicine and how it can improve access to care, actually improve the quality of care, and how important it is in our rural communities. So to me, broadband is one of the critical components of what our responsibilities are as a state government. But in many of our rural communities, broadband is either not available or is highly unreliable. And we estimate that about a quarter of our households in the state are without great service. So we've made this a top priority. In 2014, we created a broadband fund that awards grants to underserved communities, as well as a broadband deployment board to oversee their selection. This year, I think one of the not only greatest pieces of legislation, but one way you know that legislation is important is by its number, right? So we number bills. So Senate Bill 2 created an amazing, stable funding model for us. And it built on something that started in 2014, where we put some initial funding in, but the magnitude of the funding that the legislature appropriated and the governor signed into law is fairly significant. So over $100 million over the next 5 years will be allocated to close the gap in our rural communities. And the Broadband Deployment Board that we created will continue to distribute those funds in a way that supports all viable services and technologies, 25x3. I actually did have to, I know this much, it's dangerous, but I did know that 25x3, Tony knows this, was the standard. We had to get to that. We've seen some promising early success stories. Between Minturn and Leadville, the town of Red Cliff was in a particular difficult location to serve in a very small and deep valley. Thanks to the Broadband Deployment Board, as well as DOLA, the town of Red Cliff, and Forethought.net, the town was able to get broadband, in part by piggybacking on the infrastructure at Ski Cooper and their lift towers. We also track progress on broadband availability as a key measure of economic and infrastructure development. We track the percentage of school districts and households with broadband access. We have something called the Governor's Dashboard that I created with my team, and literally we only picked 30 measures, from clean air to graduation rates to number of people who have health insurance. And we felt so strongly about broadband access that that became one of the key metrics that we have that are publicly available to everybody in the state to track. We track the percentage of rural households specifically, knowing that we cannot ignore the toughest connection cases in our state. So what's critical going forward, we have the infrastructure, we have a decision-making board, we now have a fairly significant amount of money to put into broadband, and we have a team of folks in the state who are so devoted to doing this work. So what's critical now is execution. And states, counties, municipalities, and the private sector have to work together. I think we look at this conference as, it's hard to say a beginning, but it certainly is a critical part of the next step in leveraging Senate Bill 2 to the maximum so that we can ensure that all Coloradans have access to this vital resource. Done right, this can be a significant step towards the governor's goal of universal broadband access by 2020. Now, I have to confess, we made that our goal. The money doesn't line up with it, so I am going to do something politicians never do. I'm going to admit we might not hit this goal, but we're on the path, and we really know that with the funding lasting through 2022, that we think that 100% is achievable by then. And when we get to that place, we'll finally be able to say that no Colorado business is limited in the customers that they can reach. No student's going to be struggling to find some new or rare piece of information that is needed to expand their horizons and contribute to their learning. No medical provider will be cut off from the expertise of their peers and the full potential of telemedicine. The full potential of the online world will be a little more available to all of us, and I'm pleased to play a small role in that, and with you as partners, I know that we can succeed. So thank you very much. Enjoy your conference. Appreciate being here.
And I want everyone to know that please help yourself